Hi, and welcome to part 2 of our PowerShell Universal project, where we are creating our Active Directory tool, which can be used in like a help desk environment or your home lab environment if you're just playing around and learning PowerShell and learning Active Directory and learning PowerShell Universal. In the first video, we went ahead and we created all of these endpoints, which will allow us to be able to call these from our application that we're going to be creating in user interfaces to be able to perform actions on our Active Directory users, either reset their password, unlock their account, enable or disable their account, or simply just look up their group membership or look up some certain details that we need. In this video, all we're going to be actually doing is designing our layout for our application. So we're not going to be programming any of the actual functionality of the buttons. We're going to do that in future videos, and they're going to be broken down in quite a bit. So they should be nice digestible pieces, because even just making the layout can be quite cumbersome if you're not used to it. So let's go ahead and let's first create our user interface here. So that's going to be on the left hand side. We're just going to click on user interfaces, and we're going to click on apps here. And we see our app that we've created in our tutorial series. So all we're going to actually do is create a new app here. And we're going to name this app Active Directory Tool. So let's just name that Active Directory Tool. And all I'm going to do is make the URL the exact same. So Active Directory Tool. And let's click on OK. And there is our application here. So let's go ahead and let's just edit the properties here first. So what I like to always do is put our environment as 7.4.1 here. We're going to remove the authentication for us because we don't want to do the authentication in our case, but you can definitely put the authentication on yours. And we're going to click on OK. And it's just deploying. And now we're going to go on edit details here. And as you can see, it just gets the UD page home. I'm just going to go ahead and we are going to click on the actual home page here. And this one is by default a designer. Now we actually do not want to use a designer. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to click on new page here. And we're going to name this our Active Directory user dashboard here. And our title, we're going to make it the same thing. And the URL, we are just going to leave it blank, and we are not going to use a designer here. So we're just going to click on OK. And there, if we just hit save, let's just go back. And instead of get UD page name home, what we're going to do is we're going to put in our Active Directory. It is Active Directory. You need to put the actual name that you've named it here. So I don't remember offhand the name that I put in for it. So let me just click on that. It is going to be Active Directory user dashboard here. So let's just copy that and let's paste that in here. And there you go. We can save that. And then if we actually just go ahead and we view our application here, we can see that we see Active Directory user dashboard, and we don't have anything in here. So everything is good. So this little globe icon is the view. If you ever want to turn off your dashboard, you can turn it off here. But let's go ahead and let's edit the details here. And then let's click on our Active Directory page. And here we can actually start programming our dashboard here. And we'll be able to see any live changes on this tab here, which is just our tab that we have the application open. And let's go ahead and let's erase the comment. And we're just going to go in here. We're just going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. And let's actually start designing our page. So the first thing we're going to want to do, since we want a really, really nice layout for this application, is we're going to create a grid. So we're going to do a new UD grid, and we're going to want to make sure that we make this a container, and then the content for this grid, and then we're going to do an open and closing curly bracket. And then in here, we're going to do a new UD grid. And this one is going to be an item. And then what I usually do is I like to size the extra small size, and I like to put this at 2. Now, what you're going to want to really do is you're going to want to really have, to be honest, you're going to want to eventually test these with all your different size screens that you would typically have. And there's properties for small size, medium size, large size, and extra large size. Now, I like to keep these pretty much all set to 2. In most cases, you're going to want to make sure that if you're looking at a mobile, it makes sense. If you're looking at a desktop, it also makes sense. What I found is that the extra small size 2 works pretty good in this case. And then we're going to do content once again. And then in here, we're going to put our content of our first grid here. So what we're doing is we're making a container, and then in our containers, we're going to have basically little boxes that are going to design our content. Now this size 2 means it takes up 2 spots in our grid row, and a row of a grid can have up to 12 spots, and it has to have 12 spots. If you only put 6 and then you put another grid of 6, that grid will be actually on the same row. We're going to see that in just a little bit. So when we actually have our first little grid here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a new UD form. And then our submit text is going to actually be search. And then our content here, once again, so this is going to be the content of our form, is going to be a new UD text box. And it's going to have an ID of username. And then our label, which is going to be visible to our user, is just going to say username. And then all we're going to make sure that we have here is just another property called onSubmit. And we're just going to put an open and closing curly bracket. And we're going to come to that in a future video because we're not doing any of the functionality here. So if we actually just go ahead and we hit save here, now let's just go minimize here, look at our dashboard. So we actually already have our username box here, which we can actually type. And we have our search button, which does nothing right now because we haven't actually done the onSubmit action here. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding our controls. So our buttons like unlock account, enable account, disable account, and reset password here. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our code. And what we're going to want to do here is we're going to do a new UD grid. And this is going to be another item. And this one is going to take up the rest of the space. So we're going to do a size 10 here. And we're going to do a content, open and closing curly bracket. And then inside of that, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure that all these buttons are really nicely aligned and all grouped together. So what we want to do is we want to do a new UD paragraph. And then the content, open and closing curly bracket. In here, we're going to put in all of our buttons here. So in here, we are going to do a new UD button. And this one, we're going to put an ID for this one. Now, anything that you're going to want to really interact with, so anything that you're going to be programming, you always want to have an ID so this way you can reference it, as we've seen in our tutorial series for PowerShell Universal. So this button, we're going to name it Unlock Account. And then the text for that is we are going to also do Unlock Space Account. And by default, we actually want it to be disabled. And then we're going to have, once again, our on click, and we're just going to do an open and closing curly bracket. because we don't actually want to do any actions right now. We don't want to program any of the actions. And all I'm actually going to do is paste this button 4 more times. And I'm just going to rename the ID. So the second one is going to be enable account. And then the text, we're going to say enable account. The third one we're going to do as disable account. And then make sure we change the text as well. And then our last one is going to be reset password. So we need to actually fully modify the text here to reset password. All right, so once we actually have all of that, if we actually hit save now, let's go back here and let's look at our screen here so we can actually see our search box and our search button here. And then we can see the text here. Now, none of them really look like buttons, and that's because they're all disabled. So if we actually just go ahead and let's just remove the disabled on the unlock account one here. Let's hit save. And then if we go to it, you're going to see that it becomes nice and blue. And you can see when we hover our mouse over it, it becomes actually clickable. So that is all working. So I'm just going to make sure that we put the disable back here. I don't want it to be enabled by default. We want all the buttons to be disabled by default. And this is because when there's no account entered into the form, you shouldn't be able to unlock a null account or enable a null account, disable a null account, or reset a password on no selected account. And then what we're going to want to do, what I also like to do, which I haven't done here just yet, is I like to add comments here to just say grid for search fields. And then this one is going to be grid for buttons. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to make a new grid. So now we're going to do a new UD grid. Now what's going to happen is this is actually going to be underneath those other ones because we used up our 12 columns in our first row. So now we're going to be in our new row here. So we're going to do a new UD grid. Nothing really changes. It's still an item. And we're going to do an extra small size of 5 here. And we're going to make sure that we put our content and then open and closing curly bracket. Now here, we're going to want to actually put in the section on where you're going to, so you're searching for your user, you're going to hit search. If something comes up for that username, this is where all that info is going to be. So what we want to do is we want to do a new -UD heading. And this is going to be a content here. Now the content that we want is actually just a pair of curly brackets. In there, we're going to do a pair of double quotes. And we're going to say user details. Now what I want to also do is put a size here of 2. And then put color as white. So if we actually just save this here and just look at what this looks like, we can see that we have our user details. If you don't put the color white and you have dark mode on, this will be invisible because it does not auto pick up that you're in dark mode. So just a little warning. And of course, if you put it to light mode, it looks white as well. So just something to be aware of when you are programming your boxes. It could be handy to take that into account. So let's go into full screen here. And now that we have our heading, now what we want to do is create all of the elements. So we want to make sure that we show all those details. Now what I like to do is I like to go ahead and look at my API routes to see what kind of details we're going to be bringing back so I know what to put in here. So let's go ahead and let's hit save. And then let's go into endpoints. Let's get our user and let's go see at what we grab back here. So let's go here And all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything that's in results here. I'm just going to copy that. And we're going to go back into our user interfaces here. We're going to go into our Active Directory tool, into our page, open that up. And then all I really like to do is just paste that in here. So I have the list of properties that I'm bringing back, because these are all the properties that we really want to display to the user. So what we're going to first do is we're going to start our list element. So what I like to do here is just a new UD element. And our ID here is going to be user details. And then our tag here is going to be UL. Now, the reason for the tag UL is we are creating an unordered list. So this is the HTML tag for an unordered list because we only want bullet points. We don't want it to be a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just want bullet points. So that's why we're doing that. And then what we're going to need to do here is inside the content of our UL tag element is we're going to add more UD elements here. So new UD elements and then ID. So this ID here, what I like to do for the name is actually, let me just change these to double quotes because I just really like to use double quotes for these. The ID is going to be user details name. So what I like to do is just do user details and then the name of the property. And we're going to see why we want the name of the property here. It just makes it much, much easier. So once we have that, and the property that we want to make sure that we're referencing is the property that we're getting back from our API and not what's actually being provided by Active Directory. That's really, really important. So once we have our ID there, we're going to add a tag of LI and then our content tag, which is just going to be empty in this case. Because once again, once we load in our page, we're not going to have a selected user. So we want to make sure that it's all empty here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 properties here. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then all we want to do is change this from user details name to user details username. User principal name, and then employee ID here. And then we're going to do title. And then we're going to do enabled. And then password expired for this one. And then we just have 2 more, which is going to be locked out. And then last bad password attempt. All right, so once we actually have all of those here, let's go ahead and let's just erase this because we won't be needing those anymore. So now we have our list of items here. Now the only thing that we have left to do is to show the actual group membership. So that is going to be in a separate grid. So we're going to want to make sure that we're outside of our grid item here, which this is, we're going to add a comment here for grid for user details. And then after that grid, we're going to have a grid for group membership. Now this group membership is, we're going to do a very similar style here. So we're going to do a heading, but instead of a list is we're going to use a table. So now, and we need to create our grid first. You guys probably already noticed that. So we're going to do a new UD grid item and then extra small size. And this one, we're just going to do it another 5. So both of these are 5. So technically, there's still a little bit of wiggle room on this row here. So let's do content, and then open and closing curly bracket. We're going to paste our heading here. And all we're going to do is, instead of user details, we're going to put that as group membership. All right. And then after the heading, all we're going to do is we're going to create a new -ud table. And then we're going to make an ID for it. And we're going to just call it groups. And then we're going to add some columns. Now, our columns are going to be inside of an array here. So we need to make sure that we put the @ symbol and the parentheses here. And then in there, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing new UD table column. And we're going to do the property is going to be name. And then title is going to be name. And we know what these are coming from as well. We could actually just show you guys where this is coming from. If we go into our endpoints, get user groups, and we go ahead and we look at these once again, we can see that we have our 4 properties that we send back for groups. So you can actually just go ahead and grab those. And then in here, instead of trying to remember what you have, we can just paste them in here. So we have name. And then what I like to do is I like to just copy that and then paste it in 3 more times. So we have name, we have group category. And again, you're going to want to make sure that the spelling is exactly as you have it here. So we have group scope, and then we have description. And then the title here is where you can actually differ. So here, I'm just going to put that as group category. And then we're going to put that as scope, and then that as description. All right, so we can go ahead and remove this here. So now all of our layout is pretty much done. So if we hit save, we should see what our application is going to look like. Now, again, there is no data. So we see all of our bullet points, but there's no actual data in there yet. And that's okay, because that's going to all be put in when we add that functionality into that search box. We have our buttons, they're all disabled because there isn't a user in here. And we have our group membership table with no data in there, and that's okay because we don't have any data yet because we haven't fetched a user. So that is a-okay. Now, the only thing that I would probably add here at the bottom is just on the table is we can add a show pagination. I mean, you can definitely show the search and add searches on the columns that you would want to have search on if you think that is required for your environment. We're going to see that the amount of groups in my home lab is not very many, so we don't really need to add any like fancy searching, but I do like to add show pagination. Just makes it a little bit nicer. But that should be it. So let's hit save. And now that we have our layout done, in the next couple videos, we're going to be adding the functionality in there. So in the next video, we're going to be really focusing on making this search box work. So when we hit search, it's going to load in all the user details. It's going to load in the group membership, and it's going to load in also all of the buttons accordingly, depending on the status of the user details, as well as if you put in a name that does not exist, we should get a little error message saying that there is no user found, and then it should clear all of this stuff out as well. So that's going to be the first video that we're going to make. And then afterwards, we're going to code all of the different buttons as well. The buttons will probably be able to do in 1 or 2 videos, but this searching definitely takes quite a little bit of code in there. So that's going to be on the next video. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Also, be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you guys on the next video.